here goes. Jonathan Haidt talking to some guy I can't remember his name of, who's filling in for Charlie Rose. Okay. We're gonna get some of the New York Times guy too, and he's just as bad as Haidt. So this is just full centrism circle jerk. What we're about to watch here.
Good evening. I'm Dan Senor, filling in for Charlie
Dan
Rose.
Senor.
Last Thursday, Middlebury College experienced a
Ooh,
scene that's becoming
go for it.
I'm sorry, who? I didn't mean to. No offense to Dan Senor. I said his name wrong, but
Go for it. He holds himself weird. I could say it. There's something in the disposition in which he talks that is very strange to me. Almost robotic, like he's from an alien world and is just discovering humanity for the first time.
yeah, they took him out of storage just to fill in for Charlie Rose.
They're like Charlie Rose is a bit too weird. Let's get the robot out there. Not make any subtle movements and scare anybody.
yeah, give a call to cryogenics. We gotta thaw out Dan. Um, I love this.
increasingly familiar. Dr. Charles Murray, a scholar at the American Enterprise Institute, was invited to speak.
A
A
scholar.
massive protest
Oh.
greeted him. The
I want to just frame this. So he's like Charles Murray, a scholar at the American Enterprise Institute. So Charles Murray has never been a scholar. He's only worked for political think tanks. I don't know. Like, is that scholarly? Like, I don't know. He's one of them creatures. He's never worked at a university. So like, I don't know. Very weird. Very weird. And we'll get
You're
to
right
Charles.
about the tie too. The tie is a little fucked up. You're you're right, irony mug.
Uh, but yeah, we'll get more into Charles Murray because we all know Charles Murray. I think, or I don't know. Do you know Charles Murray?
I don't actually know Charles
Oh,
Murray.
you'll hear it.
intent was
Okay.
not to simply express peaceful dissent, but to shut down his speech. Dr. Murray and the Middlebury professor who interviewed him ran into a mob of protesters, several of whom physically assaulted Dr. Murray's interviewer and forced her to the hospital. The incident and others like it bring
weird
into
way of
sharp relief a growing tendency on American campuses, an intolerance for freedom of speech and a challenge to intellectual diversity. Joining me now to discuss this trend are Frank Bruni, an op-ed
Frank
columnist for the New York Times. He writes frequently about higher education, and Frank is the author of a recent bestseller about the college admissions mania. Where You Go Is Not Who You'll Be is the title of the book.
An antidote to the college admissions mania. All right.
I don't think anybody thought where they went is what they would be, because one is a place and the other is your identity.
Unless he's covering
but-
up for people who, like, a lot of people associate with assholes going to Yale, for example. Maybe he's maybe he's one of these. When he went to one of these Ivy League schools, and he's so tired of people being like, "Oh, you're from this school. You're an asshole." So he wrote this
I'm not an asshole.
Yeah.
By,
Where you go is not who you'll be.
by Frank Bruni. Where are they doing this interview? Because it
In the
feels like
void.
it's in yeah, it's like in the forbidden zone. Like, what has happened?
Have you ever watched Charlie Rose? This is how Charlie Rose always did his show. It was like in some like nebulous. It had that like almost like inside the actors studio vibe where it's just like everyone's quiet. You're in this like dark space. We're gonna be intimate right now and talk about your life.
I think the thing that's throwing me off is the Twilight Zone esque look and aesthetic to the guest host. And yeah, so I don't know. Like, I have seen Charlie Rose. I'm not getting a whole lot of Charlie Rose out of this.
There is a like Charlie Rose, creepy, yes, but there was a reason why he carried the show for as long as he did. There was like some sense of charisma there, or like he
Yeah.
he knew how to engage with the people at the table. I will say, so Charles Murray, he is most famous for co-writing the Bell Curve, which is
Ooh.
an like they say it's not in there, but you can go watch the Sean video. Or there's tons of videos that like spell it out. because it's a bit of a sleight of hand, which he does in the book. But the premise of the book is that there is a genetic difference between white people and black people, which accounts for their IQ differences. Okay? And then furthermore, that extends to an argument in which, because there is this IQ gap and it must be genetically based, and by genetic they mean racially based, we shouldn't invest in things like social housing and other policies, because why would you give these people who you can't train to be better anyways because they're just genetically more stupid any more help than they, because the extra help isn't going to actually help them. That's kind of the premise of their book. Okay, and
Holy fuck.
they will.
Sorry.
But like now that you're feeling that, don't you understand why people were protesting speaking at a university? Okay, so that
He just referred to him as like a published,
just
like,
a
did he call
scholar
him
at
an
the
academic?
American scholar at the American Enterprise Institute.
Right.
Like
Right.
it gets worse than that because like we've talked about this ad nauseum, but like in the book The Bell Curve, that one of their main sources for this was uh one of the main sources of this. It just said welcome to the chat room. Did I disconnect?
No, I got you.
Weird. I'm not doing the explanation justice. Well, thanks, Viking Man. Tell me what I'm not doing. What justice I'm missing. Tim Marsh just says, "Yeah." So you're wrong. The thesis is helping black people close ability gaps, and with white people is pointless because genetics drive the difference, and they'll just reassert themselves. The hierarchy is natural and unchangeable. Yeah. So the further thing is like the sort of like factual basis for this conclusion stems from a lot of work from the Pioneer Fund that produced a journal called Mankind Quarterly. Now that was a like overt white nationalist screed that was not good science. Uh, no one in academia really gave it all that much credit. And one of the main scholars, in fact, the president of the Pioneer Fund, is a guy named Philippe J. Rushton, who was a professor at University of Western Ontario, where I was doing my PhD, and almost got sanctioned for asking his students' penis size because he had a theory that the longer your penis is, the lower your IQ would be. So black people have bigger penises, therefore they have the lowest IQ. Asian people have the smallest penises, that's why they have the highest IQ. And white people are just right. That was like his big scientific position. You seemed worried, Eric.
Not to discount the obvious and overt racist overtones to that. It's just like racist bullshit. But I'm going to make a dumb joke. Did he consider himself a very smart person?
One would assume so, or at least he would say that he's just smart enough. Okay, he's right in that middle.
Oh, that's fucking awful. Oh my god.
Yeah, no, this is so like when you want to talk about how shitty Charles Murray is, it's like it's not easy to like figure it out. Yet everyone wants to think that, like all these enlightened centrist people, like Sam Harris gave him. Why is everyone so mad at you? Like all you said was that like IQ is a real thing, and it's like no, Sam, you fucking moron. Like if you actually read the subtext of the book, he literally argues that black people are genetically have genetic differences than white people, and it's associated with their IQ. Like you can't just say that he doesn't say, like they even say in the book that they don't say that, but then in their chapter which explains it, they fucking say it. So it's like it's one of these things where like they knew they had to somewhat hide their conclusion, and so they tried their best to obfuscate and confuse people. But when your sources are people like Philippe J. Rushton, you're not really hiding it. It's right out in fucking clear view for anyone who actually cares to learn about these things. So
Yeah.
that's who we're defending here on Charlie Rose.
Oh my god. It doesn't surprise me in the least that Sam Harris would run interference for him. Considering Sam Harris's own proclivities to say horribly Islamophobic shit and then be like, but I'm saying it very softly.
Yes.
So
and
so,
you'll see Jonathan Haidt has that similar demeanor.
yeah, great.
He will not raise his voice.
And Jonathan Haidt, who's a professor at NYU's Stern School of Business, is the author of the New York Times best-selling book, The Righteous Mind: Why Good People Are Divided by Politics and Religion. He's also founder of a new organization dedicated to countering what he calls illiberalism on campus, called the Heterodox Academy. Welcome to you both. I want to start with you, Frank. There's a lot to cover in this discussion. First of all, how did we get here? This incident with Dr. Murray at Middlebury was...
Before, I do want to say, we mentioned Heterodox Academy, so I do want to cover it. He started a group that was called Heterodox Academy, and it was co-signed by people like Steven Pinker and Richard Dawkins and other fellows. I did find out recently, actually, this is kind of sad. I went to it recently, and I went to their advisory council, and I sad to say, Cornel West is on it. I don't know why Cornel West is on it. And the quote Cornel West gives here is, "We don't lose ourselves in some homogenous kumbaya union. No, we acknowledge our differences. We acknowledge the ways in which we might look at the world through different lenses, and yet we can still be mutually empowered." And I'm just like, Cornel, what? I love you, but why? Why is that? But most most of the people here, I mean, you got David Brooks,
Yeah.
Alice Dreger, who we've talked about before. She's terrible. I think he's the person who started the University of Austin, Hanno Canellis or whatever. Glenn
Yeah,
Lowry.
canceled university. Yeah.
Glenn Lowry is another person, Sam Harris person. Believes a lot of stupid shit. Even their, I guess, board of directors, Jonathan Haidt. But a bunch of people I don't know. But all pretty much white board of directors, except for Tony, I'm guessing. But what a lovely, diverse, for the people who are like, we need, because if you read our mission, to improve the quality of research and education in university by increasing open inquiry, viewpoint diversity, and constructive disagreement. And that's why most of us are white. Look, Cornel West has some bad takes in him every so often. A real stinker. Yeah, this is a stinker. I'm going irregularly quiet. I hope it's maybe Vienno made me push the microphone away from me because we fixed it with the other issues. So maybe I should be fine now. I moved it closer now. Hopefully now I will not go periodically quiet. For the past 20 seconds, have I been periodically not quiet?
You've been fine on my end.
Yeah, because Discord's wonderful. It premixes it. It does some fancy work that the other thing doesn't.
Yeah. As a guest, am I sounding okay, everybody?
Usually, again, because the Discord premixes things, you usually sound wonderful, and so does Vienno. It's me and my mic placement. I mean, part of the issue is I talk like this, and so I got to learn better mic control. I got to make out with the mic or something, and then that'll be better.
You're saying I sound great, which honestly is doing wonders for my self-confidence. So thank you, everybody.
Hopefully, well, I don't know if anything that I do will fix it for now. So we might just have to go with it. Maybe I'll turn myself up just a little bit. See how that goes.
Wow. All these nice things said about me in the chat. This is unbelievable.
They love
Thank
Eric.
you, Evan. Thank you, Brent. Oh, thank you, Vienno. Even though you're on mic and I can just talk to you. Who else? I think Viking Man said something. Oh no, sounds okay, Jody. That's not about me. Oh.
I will.
Thank you, Tim.
I will say about the Charles Murray thing. So I guess he spoke at some Middlebury College thing, and I guess the person who was interviewing him got injured. I remember hearing some things that there's some, how injured was she? Was this after the fact of them trying to say that the left-wing radicals on campus were worse than they really were, or something like this. So I'll just play neutral on that and just take them at their word that this speaker got injured. But that we don't need to go into that details. Either way, there was like a group of students who protested Charles Murray at Middlebury, and now robot dude, who I already forgot his name, Dan Schnorr. He's gonna ask a question to Frank here. Here we go.
Oh boy.
It's not the first time this has happened. We're seeing this all over the place. This didn't exist when you and I were going to college.
No.
What has happened?
Well,
When
luckily,
we
we're
went
not
to
seeing the
college,
kind of
we were
violence at
young.
Middlebury or at UC Berkeley everywhere, but we are seeing this desire to shut down speakers who are unwanted. And I think there are three things that come to mind above all others. One is we are living in an era when you step away from campus of increasingly partisan, polarized, vitriolic debate. So why wouldn't we see a heightened version of that on campuses, among kids who are at the most passionate phase of life? I think it's also important to note that this is the generation that's the everybody gets a trophy generation, right? So no one modulates themselves or thinks.
Everyone gets a trophy.
Yeah. Maybe the problem is that the kids are too woke. Finally, someone put forward an original idea. It's it's so lazy. Like
it is.
Students
Sorry, Vienna. Go
and
for it.
students and colleges, famously apolitical sites of learning without any protests associated with them whatsoever, and especially not in the past, nothing
That's
like perhaps, 1968 happening.
I know, like, what history does this guy exist in? So that never happened at universities before.
Yeah, it just came out of nowhere. I also like the idea of these guys in college because they were just a fun gang of troublemakers. Like putting beer in the water fountains, like just having a good old time, not really thinking too much about politics.
This is
Now everyone's just,
this is a place where we test ideas by chugging beer.
yeah, doing keg stands and stuff, not advocating for a better world.
The best school prank is still bringing a cow upstairs, because cows, like, physically and like mentally are not capable of going down them. So once you bring a cow up somewhere, it's stuck there.
Amazing.
Unless there's an elevator.
This is entirely a side note, but no, well, an elevator big enough to hold a cow, like.
When I worked in radio, we had an elevator on the radio station to get to the studio, and the sales guy called me from inside at one time because he was stuck. And sorry, I'm derailing this entirely. It was the most fun phone call I ever got in the station. Though. He's just like, "Hey, Eric." I'm like, "Yeah, what's up?" He's like, "I'm stuck in the elevator." And I'm like, "What do you want me to do?"
He just wanted to
so
call you because he thought you'd appreciate it.
I guess he thought I would have some sort of solution. He told me to press the buttons at the top floor and then at the bottom floor, and then he got out. He was very, very appreciative. And I mean, I can see myself doing the Terminator thing now. I see that now. But I guess that's a lesson about helping your neighbor.
True.
Sorry for derailing.
Did everyone involved in that situation get a trophy?
No, I was kind of hoping for one.
I did have a question just for both you and Vienna, and the chat as well. I don't recall there ever being a time in my childhood or even like my kids now that like there was the everyone gets a trophy generation. When was that ever a thing? I don't remember that ever being a thing. I remember competitions existing even when I was in school. There's competitions that exist right now for my son who's currently in school. Occasionally he wins a prize and he'll be the only one who won the prize and gets to take it home. Now they might have a prize every week and like usually they make it so most people win all the time or whatever they do. He's in grade 1. But like it's still a competition. Like there's some aspect of competitiveness and not everyone gets a trophy. Like I don't understand when this ever happened.
Yeah, I mean, the push against giving out participation awards is only affecting the trophy store industry.
Yeah.
And really this is like an anti-small business take from these people. I got participation awards. I threw them out because like they were meaningless to me, right? Like they sat in a closet for a couple of years. I'm like, I don't need these, but like it doesn't matter because the sports that we played as kids really didn't matter beyond the fact that we were playing them, right? Like it was like a way of socializing us and having fun while we like jammed knowledge into our heads. Um, yeah, I
mean, we
don't
get
get this like. Sorry, go ahead.
participation trophies in, like, you know, you do like first aid training and they give everyone the certificate who takes the course. Those things still exist in adulthood, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
You all
exactly.
played the
I mean,
game, you know.
a
Eric, how old
diploma
are
is
you
good.
again?
I am a very old 20. I'm turning 30 soon.
Okay. I thought you said a very old 20, and I thought that was gonna be it. I was like, what the fuck? No.
I am 20 years old. I look awful. The pandemic's been very hard on me.
we got a good spread. I think there's like maybe a 5 years between all of us. So.
Nice. Am I
But
splitting the
that
difference? Like,
but that also proves if neither of us got a participate participation trophy, then, or at least not everything was a participation trophy for each of our generations. So you know, there would have been no overlap in our high school careers. So that's like, you know, a new cohort of like students, you know.
I mean, it
Precipitation
could have
trophy.
been that I was in the Catholic system, so
Yeah.
you know, we all got rosaries type of thing.
Your participation
That
is
was
eternal life.
yeah, exactly. You know, we all got to participate in communion with
yes.
Christ, our Lord and Savior, etc., etc. Um, that's presuming that you didn't just like skip church or whatever. Which, once you figure out you could do that, then like that made Catholic school a lot more fun. You could just like hang out downtown or whatever. But yeah, no, like I don't remember any of this happening at any point. And then also like my sister's 8 years younger than me, and so she's still in high school. I don't think she had it. And then
That's the thing,
y-
and even if it did, it clearly didn't leave a lasting impact on us. Like, or if it did, like, I'm
yeah, well,
completely
that's the other question.
oblivious.
Yeah, like it could have been just such a non-event that none of us remember it too.
It just, yeah, it doesn't matter, right? Like, I don't remember what years my hockey team won as a kid. I remember winning. It was cool. I don't have the trophy anymore because I'm an adult man, and if I had like a setup of like Kiwi hockey trophies in my house,
No, that'd be
that would
so good. Are you kidding?
it would be so embarrassing.
But nothing else? Like just a trophy rack? I'm like, yeah. When I was like 9, I
Yeah,
really
plays.
fucking killed it at hockey.
I could really fucking move, yeah.
Oh, God. The deep state is ensuring that your child feels validated for their efforts in competitive fields. These people are saying. Oh, hello, Grippy. Oh my God.
Oh, it's so
I
funny.
mean, like I'll hit play again in a second here, but like you hit on it too, which is like a lot of this when it comes to this sort of shit, they just get to say it, which is like the most frustrating thing. How do you just get to say shit like this, which is based on fucking nothing, and yet they're the ones who are like, I'm the super rational centrist here. I'm clearly the intellectual. I'm sitting here with Dan fucking Robot Man and other intellectual dude who's rational. So like, you know, don't you remember participation trophies? And they're all like, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like,
Yeah, and I mean, I don't totally believe in painting a whole generation with one broad stroke the way that these enlightened individuals do in the forbidden zone over here, where they're like, oh, all millennials and now I guess Gen Z, they don't understand the spirit of competition because they all got trophies when they competed. But it's like, what generation were the parents that forced them to all get trophies were in this hypothetical situation? Because the people that were taking away competition then should be more to blame for this than the 6-year-olds that were receiving the trophies, right?
but I
like
like
I don't think so. I think I decided.
I want to know what like the reverse of this is. Like, what do you Like, are they gonna go like, in the 1950s when we beat our children, that's when things were good. We created some socially well-developed children when we assaulted them in our household. Like, well, I don't know, like, what is the other end of this? Like, why was like, if you're gonna go back to when they were kids, like, society didn't create better kid. Like, if anything, you created people with a lot of trauma. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just such a stupid fucking point.
I was gonna joke about like, oh, they want Hunger Games, but no,
Yeah.
like you're right with it, Jody, and that's like way worse, honestly. Is like, yeah, they are the types that'll say like, oh yeah, I was beat as a kid and I turned out fine, and it's
Yeah.
like, no, you don't. You want to beat kids, like,
Like, clearly the trauma
It's
affected you.
problem.
You
Yeah.
lack any and all empathy. Like, maybe that's the
Yeah.
problem.
So what we need in our modern day society is a generation of sociopaths
Yeah.
that want to hurt each other. And
That will allow me to
will-
say racist things on campus without yelling at me.
yeah. I want them so focused on undercutting their friends and colleagues to try and get to the top to win some meager reward that they won't notice me saying horrible shit in my terrible books.
Yeah. Exactly. Let's hear more of the wonderful Frank Bruni.
I should kind of retire in the public space, let other people have their say, because everybody is, that's very individualist sentiment like that. And then lastly, and Jonathan, I think, can speak to this much better than I can, there's not a lot of ideological diversity on a lot of the campuses where this is happening. And so the notion that somebody with a perspective totally contrary to your own deserves the stage, deserves to be heard, that's sort of going away because there's so little diversity and there's so little appreciation for that, really important ethos of education and of civil debate.
We don't have to. This is something we've spoken on a ton of times, but I even think that this notion is complete and utter horseshit. That there's no ideological diversity on campus, and I don't know if like that's just skewed because I mean my only anecdotes are University of Waterloo and University of Western Ontario, but both of those had plenty of conservatives and plenty of asshole professors that I hated, and there was no like outright calls to get them like fired or whatever, except in certain cases where they like said we shouldn't have gay marriage legalized or something. Uh,
And I mean, no, like he's in some respects right. The ideological range of universities leans from center right to far right, and it's like,
but they're gonna say that the ideological diversity doesn't exist because they're all Marxists, right? Like that's the part that's like fucked up.
God,
Yeah,
I fucking wish it'd be so funny.
These
I would
people,
love
like,
Western full of Marxists.
it's so shocking because like this is a world where I mean Jordan Peterson was a university professor.
Yeah.
I guess he still is on the payroll. Bruce Party is at Queens.
This
like,
person
all these,
still
like-
teaches at the University Business School of New York or whatever the hell it is. So there you go.
Yeah, he's like, oh, my voice is being drowned out at universities. Meanwhile, he lectures there. Like, it's,
I mean, this guy still does. I don't know if he's a teaching professor anymore, but like he gives fucking tours all around, speaking to all these people, ranking in the big bucks. Gets to go on things, being like, "I'm a public intellectual. I still teach at this university," and yet he's the one telling us that like, no, all the universities are broken.
this makes me so tired.
Yep.
What we're seeing in the last few years is the rise of a particular subgroup that is extremely passionate morally about equality, about fighting racism, and that's all great. But they've adopted a way that is kind of vindictive, that is all about calling people out. So people are afraid of them. And it's not just the students, it's actually the professors too. So even if it's only 5 or 10% on any campus, the fact that they can file charges against a professor.
Wow.
At NYU, we have a new bias response team. So any video I show, anything I say in class, if it offends a student, there's numbers all over in every bathroom urging them to call, report me. So that changes the way we teach. And then, as Frank said, if students aren't exposed to diverse ideas, then if somebody like Charles Murray comes, well, he spoke at Middlebury 10 years ago, and there was no big problem.
After his more controversial
Okay, we'll get to this in a second, but like, I love the way he fucking moves here because it's like, we're more open and like, yeah, we don't like racists anymore, and that's all great. But now they want to like, I don't know, call to get the people in trouble who are racists. Like that's taking it way too fucking far. Like,
Whoa. Yeah, I just like that was not a sentence you could add a but
Yeah.
on the end. Like that was it's like, yeah, people are interested in combating racism.
No, it is one
Period.
thing to
That's where
be.
that sentence ends.
It's one thing to be anti-racist, but to be vindictively anti-racist, are no, you just it's the addition of the vindictiveness that just makes your anti-racism uncouth. You know, it should not
I
be
don't think they're
It's
gonna be mean to me.
it's one thing to be anti-racist. It's another to have any sort of action applied that is anti-racist.
Wait, he's breaking up this legal structure, and I'm who I don't even know any of these cases where like I don't know like laws were used against professors who said racist things. Like if anything, the laws are being used against like mostly like sexual misconduct cases and stuff like this. And even then, they're not like followed through on with any like regularity that I could say the system is doing a good job. You know, but like those are like what the legal offices are doing. I can't even think on the top of my head a case where like I don't know a professor who had tenure was sanctioned legally because they said something like racist. Like nothing, just like I'm sure maybe it's happened somewhere. I just can't think of it. You know, even like when
Mhm.
we've talked about it, all these people end up like resigning themselves. Like you could do, your Brett Weinstein, where they'll be like, I left because the university doesn't want me anymore. They've changed. And they
I
play
mean,
it off like they got canceled, but no, you resigned. Like that's on you.
the legal action taken against professors is generally like it was with that
Oh,
Palestinian professor who was,
yeah,
banned from
University of Toronto.
being hired at U of T. Yeah, that like got the university censured because they were being like horrific about academic freedom. And it's like, oh, geez, where were these guys when all that was going down? Oh, they supported it. Like,
And
It's wild
foreshadowing, some of
how.
that's coming up too. Sorry.
Oh
oh,
yeah.
geez.
I think that's a really good point, Vienno. I think the Azarova affair, um, really um, illustrated how seriously these free speech warriors took their free speech war, right? Because like as soon as someone who said something they disagreed with, like no, she should be dealt with and removed immediately, right?
This was the whole Doug Ford free speech on campus bullshit when he got elected. Like it was amazing to me having to communicate with people who were just like, "Well, the policy that he wants to implement says free speech, and therefore it must be free speech. Are you telling me that it's not free speech? Are you against free speech for opposing it?" And it's like the policy says you're not allowed to protest other people for their speech, but that is itself is silencing people's speech. I'm allowed to be like, that person sucks very loudly and publicly. That's part of my free speech just as much as it's his free speech to be a fucking racist at my campus. And
Yeah.
it's
Well,
just
it's
amazing that people like, and like that was put in place largely to curb Palestinian activism for yelling at like fucking IDF soldiers speaking at campuses.
yeah. It's so tiresome, and it's also like these people are all they're in so much control of these very old institutions. Like anytime they see any sort of semblance of a shift, they all start panicking, and we just have to
This is the
we have to like
panic.
ride the wave.
This is the panic happening in real, like, they're like lawyers and like legal stuff might come after us. And it's like, who has the power in this? Like, he's almost making it out like the kids have all the fucking power here. But like, no, they don't. Like, the kids, that's why the kids are yelling and trying to shut things down by like occupying things and like doing all the things that you're like, it's because they all had participation trophies that now they're occupying the dean's office.
Yeah, yeah. I could not imagine being this pathetic and like seeing a group of children um like just admonishing you for being awful, and then being like, these children have altogether too much power, I should be able to shoot them at on sites. Universities used to have rules.
Now it's all like I think I said this on the DMs before we did this, but there's like an element in which, like, again, like I talked about occupying the dean's office, but like you got to think of like the amount in which the new generation of students have, or even just like general activists have like taken over roads, all the Black Lives Matter protests against police and other authority figures. That for them to say like all of a sudden these children are coddled and reliant on like parental figures to tell them what to do, and that somehow they need the university to like tell the weak professors who are so incapable of defending themselves to like tell them not to be racist, and that so they're crying at the institution to police this, and it's like, but that's not what's happening. Like, if anything, the kids are rebelling against the authority for being this, you know, and
Yeah.
going, we don't want this anymore. These people are a bunch of racist pricks who still exist in these institutions, and maybe they could fuck off and like make the campus more diverse.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like, I mean, that's much closer to the truth than what what we're about to hear. But I feel like that doesn't play into their narrative that they are the protagonist in the story,
Yeah.
because these people can't they can't understand a world in which they're the problem, right? Like,
No, I mean, it's definitely not going to happen. Well, this also happened before Black Lives Matter, but it's actually going to be really relevant to, or at least this didn't happen. This happened before the George Floyd escalation of Black Lives Matter protesting, but that's going to be more relevant for the next clip. And hopefully, I don't. Do you got another hour in you? Is that asking too much from you?
I could do an hour.
Sweet. Maybe we will. I mean, but we're stopping and talking all the time. That's
Yeah.
but it's
Oh,
good. It's fun.
uh-oh.
That's how it is.
Yeah, I'm having a good time though. This is really, really fun.
Good.
Controversial book. He's since then, his 2012 book, Coming Apart, which is
much
he was
less
supposed to
controversial. Yeah.
much less controversial. That's what he was supposed to be speaking about.
It's quoted in the
Yeah. Oh, like Charles Murray's new book was much less controversial, so therefore don't protest him. What do you do? And like, to the extent it was much less controversial, it was like it didn't discuss the racial issues, but like his same like don't invest in like social welfare program shit was still there. So it's not like he's learned his lesson. Okay.
Yeah, he wasn't a virulent racist. He just, wants poor people to die.
No. And then shortly after that, because I think it was after the Middlebury thing, is when he went on Sam Harris's show, and like he's never backed off of his positions in the bell curve. So it's not, it's not like he's. It would be one thing if he's like, no, I fucked up, I was completely wrong, like you know what I mean. But instead, he's like, I'm not wrong, and I'm still a racist. But how dare they protest them? There's these two. They're too sensitive on these campuses today.
opinion columns of the New York Times all the
That's left
time.
and right.
Yeah,
Yes,
yes,
That's
yes,
right. And
yes.
But the
that's
New York
biggest problem
Times
of our
wrote about
age.
him,
I
so
mean,
he's
why did
fine.
Trump win? It's the coming apart of the
Yes.
by class.
It is a minority of students, and it is a minority of
these
schools.
page
But they do
turns
set
are
the tone. And
unbelievable.
at those schools where this is prevalent, it's really, really pronounced. And we're producing graduates who have little sense of the true ideological, political diversity of American life. I went, within the last couple of years, want to be vague, to a very esteemed liberal arts college in the Northeast. And when I was there, the president had a dinner for me at the
So, I mean, he's saying that most people they don't. All these people at the universities, they don't know what it's like meeting those regular folks. But and then in contrast with that, Frank Bruni is so well connected. He was at the president's table for a dinner at a well-established
regular
liberal
working
arts
guy.
college.
President is a job, okay?
It's-
President is working class.
No, you see, it's all those poor students that don't understand the poor experience, okay? But me, Frank Bruni, hanging out with the president of a well-established. Did I mention it was well-established? A well-established liberal arts institution. They're the ones that are out of touch, not me.
That was a shameless name drop. And that would get you uninvited to the next afternoon tea in the Forbidden Zone.
But
In
notice-
my house, at least.
But he didn't actually drop the name, and we're gonna get to why in a second.
President's house, and all these faculty members went around the table and sang the praises of the school. And I heard about the affinity group they had for this group. I heard about XYZ. We got to the end, there were like 20 faculty members. At the end, they said, do you have any questions? And they were all boasting about what a diverse environment they had. And I had one question. I said, is there a group for Republican students? And they looked at me like it had never occurred to them. And there was one student there, and she said, I think there is, but they maybe have one member. Now, schools trip over themselves to get racial diversity. They give a lot of lip service to socioeconomic diversity, and some of them do better than others. But what about this whole other kind of diversity? How are we going to move forward as a country if many of our top schools are graduating kids who can't even begin to process how a human being could vote for Donald Trump? They need to understand who voted for Donald Trump and why, and that they're not monsters.
I love the idea of the one-man young conservative group. It's just like a weird guy in a suit. Oh, that rules. But I think Chad is entirely right in that, conservatives are a dime a dozen in post-secondary. They're everywhere, and they're very annoying, and they raise their hand all the time to tell the professor why they're wrong.
And granted, I mean, a lot of them are not hanging out at the Republican nerds that sit around in the Republican club on campus. They're probably slamming brews and hitting on the cheerleaders in very sexually compromising ways. That's what's happening. And I hear those stories all the fucking time because they're happening in the real. Who wants to hang out with boring fucking suit and tie conservatives? Okay, that's not even the other conservatives want to do that.
I loved how his gotcha moment, as well as a bunch of staff members at the university talking about how diverse the student body was, and he's like, "Oh yeah, diverse, huh? Where's the Republicans?"
And then I said mic drop because it was literally red that moment. He just blew everyone's mind in that room. Oh shit, we missed that one aspect of diversity.
One guy jumped out the window, another one ran out the door with their hair on fire.
The person,
very dramatic moments.
The person working in diversity, equity, and inclusion was just my life's work is ruined. I forgot one aspect of diversity.
The young conservative group. Ugh.
If only I thought about the young conservatives.
I wonder how hard of a time the people at that dinner just had not rolling their eyes and being like, "Oh, look at this guy."
I wonder if he misinterpreted their shock at a stupid question. Shock. Was shocked that they didn't consider it. And he's just oh, I just blew their minds. And they're going, this guy's a fucking idiot.
Yeah.
Just embarrassed silence.
Yeah. Oh, God. Oh, your campus is diverse? You have a student group for people who believe girls pee out of their butts? Not so diverse now, are you? That's the campus club we all need. University of Waterloo had a cheese club. Western did not. So Western was not as diverse in the cheese category,
That's true.
Oh my god. There is a level here which you've already hit on. This is embarrassing. I'm surprised that these people aren't aware of how embarrassing they are. It blows my mind.
Well, they have super duper embarrassing dad energy in this thing, and beyond the way that Haidt talks he's explaining his fish tank to someone who's not interested. The entire, I don't know what it is. It's the way he moves his hands or something. That's what it reminds me of. This is a group of guys. This feels like a support group for a group of guys whose worldview does not apply to reality any longer. And they're like, you know what the problem is? World. The world and the woke children.
All them kids.
Not me.
It's that Principal Skinner meme, I can't remember how it is. It's is it me that it's wrong or is it the kids? No, it's the kids that are wrong.
Yeah. Am I out of touch?
Yeah.
No, it's the children who are wrong. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the best analogy here
Kids
is
got
to
it.
understand what's happening with peanut allergies. Why are peanut allergies rising? They've been rising at an alarming rate since the 90s. And so what do? We,
What do you
I
do?
take my kids to school. We get these long lectures on how we can't have any peanut butter in school.
And if you bring, I go through the same. If you bring them, you're basically expelled.
That's right. Well, a report came out last year. Do you know why peanut allergies are rising? Because we haven't exposed kids to peanuts. That's the reason they're rising. So the new recommendation is you got to give kids peanuts early.
Right.
So this is what we've been doing in the name of
Right.
No, it's not even a metaphor. I mean, it's the exact same psychological process. So Nassim Taleb has this wonderful book called
It's the exact same psychological fucking process.
It's like, what? And you used this earlier. But like, what's the alternative that he's suggesting? Are we just gonna let children asphyxiate during like social sciences? Like what?
I don't know what he's trying to say here. Like, there is like a nugget of truth, which is yes, research shows that the increase in peanut allergies is because of a decreased exposure to peanuts. Now, I'm guessing the analogy that he's trying to make is that's because all these institutions are regulating that you can't bring peanuts to school. Okay? But the reality is, no, just give your kids peanuts at home.
Yeah.
Like, that's the way to solve this fucking problem. You don't go, you know what? Fuck those kids with the peanut allergy. Everyone just bring peanuts to school until they all fucking die. And then we'll just weed out the ones with peanut allergies.
Like, what is this like Thunderdome approach to elementary school? Or is if they die, they die? Like, what the fuck?
Now, he never said that here, but it's like, what else? What are the conclusions you draw from that? There's such an easy solution to this problem.
Yeah, and it's also like, I mean, allergies develop, outside of school hours, right? Like when you're a baby, in the afternoon, right? Like it's not the school's fault that kids have peanut allergies, and I just it was like this weird connection to political correctness and wokeness being an issue.
I mean, I think he's trying to say that like parenting, the more recent aspect of parenting. I think he's going to get to it here. Treats their children as if they're fragile, and so like what he could be saying, if I'm going to be like super charitable, is that even when they're at home, parents are like afraid to give their children like peanuts or something like that. But like, if that's the case, then like, okay, fine. Then like the parents need to learn better that hey, like the best way to make sure that they don't have a peanut allergy is to make sure that they like try some peanuts out when they're young. Like that's the solution here, and it's not that complicated.
I love the idea of parents not being able to afford any peanuts because they've bought 8,000 participation trophies.
Yeah.
And so like maybe that's the issue.
You know what? That is the issue. Poverty by participation trophy. I just can't help it. I just have to. I don't want my child to feel like they weren't number one. All right.
Can't afford peanuts. And then I mean maybe Jonathan's got a point here.
Sure. Eric. Oh my god. So here's him trying to explain how this is the result of treating children too fragile.
anti-fragile. Kids are anti-fragile. So if you're fragile, that means like, oh, if I knock this, it'll break. Don't knock it.
Right.
But anti-fragile,
Yeah,
like your
don't knock it.
bones, your brain, your personality, you need challenges, you need setbacks. You need to experience exclusion and insult in order to make it to adulthood. And the biggest problem, I think, is the loss.
It's almost like he paused it because he's like, you need to get punched in the face by a bully. Let's see.
You need to have anaphylactic shock. You need to be hospitalized and on the verge of death by the age of 6.
Oh my god. Ugh.
Like,
I don't. Sorry, go ahead.
no, I was gonna make a very crude joke. That time has passed.
I mean, I don't understand this trope of very comfortable people thinking that hardship makes you into a better person. Hardship is bad. Hardship sucks. It's tiring, and it it would be better, I would say, most of the time if it didn't happen. I don't know why we want to subject children to unnecessary hardships, because life is hard.
No, I mean, for evidence of that, think about the poor professor here who's so stressed out about saying a racist thing in class because he's worried all these lawyers are just hanging out above him that if anyone speaks up, he's gonna like lose all his livelihood or something or go to prison for saying a hate crime. Like,
Yeah, they're just gonna
See,
repel into the windows.
it's like
Just
if he'd
like
been punched in the face as a small child, he might not be that afraid about free speech anymore.
if only he had anaphylaxis. If only. That's the only reason why he missed this one aspect about how he's engaged in the same behavior. It's just so. This person has a PhD, like and he's done some real fucking work. Like how is what I want to know. How does it get? Like, is it a grift thing? I hate Jonathan Haidt.
Of
yeah,
unsupervised
such a
play.
nerd too.
So
Yeah,
Lenore
nerd.
Skenazy has been brilliant on this with her book Free Range Kids. You know,
Free-range
in our
kid.
childhoods, after school, we spent time where there was no adult around, but there was a real
No
crime wave.
after-school programming.
Yeah,
Imagine
that's
that. You
right,
just have to
yeah.
come home and kind of figure out how to keep yourself busy.
Yeah, that's right. And so, but in the in the 80s, there was a real crime wave. There were anti-bullying measures. There was a fear of abduction. So for a variety of reasons, kids basically were never out of adult oversight. And now in many towns, you can get arrested if your kid goes to the park to play. So we can't be too tough on these kids. The older gen, we have deprived them of experience in the name of keeping them safe and happy and comfortable. We've deprived them of uncomfortable experiences with their peers. There's always an adult around, and so they come to campus. This is the last chance we could possibly give young Americans to learn to work out their differences, and we don't do it. We have more and more deans and processes and bias response teams so that there's always an adult to call in to settle the problem.
This is the
The thing, like, there's like a nugget here, and the nugget is that you can be an overbearing parent, like that is true, and those parents exist, and it's kind of negative, like if you're like constantly like monitoring your child and like being overprotective of them, 100%. But like the way he just described free range kids here was just like abandoning your child in the park. Okay, there's a difference between, and of course it depends on age and shit like this, right? But like when I take my 6-year-old to the park, I'm not like making sure like he doesn't bonk his head on like the handlebars or whatever the fuck he's doing. I'll be sitting there on my phone, but I'm at least in earshot in case he's being murdered. It's not about abandoning your kid. It's just giving them some sense of security that if anything happens to them, I'm right over there. Like that's yeah. Like what is he suggesting? Like he even said they're like kids used to be bullied and like now and abducted and now they're not because the parents are around all the time. But now we made them too fragile.
I Is that shit about it being illegal in places to have your kid at the park real? Because like,
Sort of.
really?
Yeah, there's been some cases where like say people have seen like really young kids all by themselves out in the middle of nowhere and been like, oh, there's no parent around. They look like they're like 6 or something. And they'll call. Which like there's an
Okay.
extent in which I'm like, that kind of makes sense. You know what I mean? If I saw like a really
Yes.
young kid just wandering around, like 100%. But like I don't think that happens like 10 and above. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
there's some like age threshold where everyone's like, no, they know what they're doing. Like they're at least
No, and
competent
like,
enough not to like, I don't know, like jump out in the middle of traffic or something.
and like, if it's a group of the younger ones, I don't think anybody's really gonna do anything unless they're causing trouble or like torturing small animals or something. Like,
Yep. And like
I don't know.
there was a child abduction panic that did occur in the 80s, and like there's some fun anecdotes that like come out of this. Well, like I use fun in like scare quotes there. In terms of like one of the examples are like that in the 80s and 90s, because people were so afraid of child abductions, They were more likely to drive their kids to school, and because of that, accidents, like including hitting children with the cars out in front of the school, increased to the extent where it's like being abducted was so low in like probability that would ever happen, but like deaths by car accidents out in front of the school like skyrocketed in comparison to what they used to be, to terms well beyond that of any kid who would have been abducted. You know what I mean? So there, so there is ways in which like our irrationality causes us to like engage in behaviors that like aren't warranted or cause more harm. You know what I mean? So like, yes, I think a similar
Yeah.
effect, like a related effect of that, is like after September 11th, people were more afraid of flying in planes because they associated more danger to it. So they took to driving more frequently, and car accidents increased because of that. And more people died than ever would have died in any plane crashes that might have occurred, right? So
Yeah.
these things happen, okay? But like,
Oh man.
but that is a different problem than the problem that he's like associated, you know. And that childhood abduction thing largely came because the guy who did America's Most Wanted, Adam Walsh, I think it is. He like wrote a series
Really?
of books that were all about the fact that his child was abducted and murdered. And it was like highly popularized, and like those books were like bestsellers for like ever, and that freaked out a lot of people. So he's largely to blame for that panic, even though what happened to his kid was terrible. Like not to.
Yeah. Yeah. Objectively, right? But it's like,
Oh, Adam Walsh was the kid. John Walsh was the father who did the show America's Most Wanted.
oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. Tim brought up something awesome in chat. Um, which was just like a recount of a story from Free Range Kids, where Haidt was telling the story online, and and talked about the value of sending an unattended 7-year-old on an extended New York subway trip, and that just seems like a deeply traumatizing thing. Makes me,
You know what that's
it's like
from? And I think this might actually be the free range parent person. Did you ever watch the show or know of the show Penn and Teller's Bullshit?
yes, I know.
So they had an episode on this, and they had this woman. I'm guessing it's the free range kid person who let it wasn't a 7-year-old. She let her 8-year-old like take the New York subway all by themselves, and then like they talk about it on the show. And there's an aspect where like it's difficult for me because like 8-year-olds, like you're getting into the range of which like they know some stuff. And if it's in the middle of the day where there's like people around, like risks start to decrease. So there's an extent to which I'm like, I'm not necessarily especially if you know your kid too. Because some kids, let's be real, they're not all good. Like if there's someone who like you've seen them behave in terms of finding their way back from things and etc. And you can it gets complicated. Should you? Probably not, but like maybe you're finding like in this case her kid turned out fine. And when they interviewed the kid on bullshit, he was like, "Oh yeah, it was fun." So like whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, I was a space cadet, very stupid child. So me on the subway, I'd still be on it probably. So I'm talking from experience there.
No, but there is an element of just like I don't know, like yeah, there's no nuance in what he's saying here. It's like, some protection is good, but it's like you got to find that balance. Like it's almost like I don't know, bullying isn't good. Like there's also like I keep going back like he mentioned bullying as one of the panics. People freaked out about bullying, and it's like are you suggesting that you want more bullying incidents? Like I don't know cuz I don't think that's good either. Like I don't know what the solution is to what you're saying. I don't
We
think there's
need
a
to
problem.
bring violence back to classrooms.
Yeah.
That's what we need to do. We need to make kids. We got to pit kids against kids. We've got
Yeah.
underground fight clubs for children. We just we got to make these kids get some aggression out on each other. Really.
We put all the kids on the subway.
Yeah.
Only one of them is allowed to exit.
And they have to decide which one.
Oh no. I wasn't thinking that. That sounds too gentle.
Oh. Uh-oh.
Oh yeah, I love Tim. A triumphant story for this kid for whom everything went well. But you know, there are actually dozens of children who get accidentally lost on public transport every day, and it's a nightmare for them. True. If I can make a conceptual point, this is also Tim. Real quick, he's referencing the Taleb book Anti-Fragile. Yes, and Taleb has a lot of fucking problems. But as that book explains, the anti-fragility of a system is made possible by the fragility and adaptive disposability of its parts. Okay, so we should dispose of children. Taleb is his own. Uh, I would tell people to take a lot of his books with a grain of salt. Anyways, he's also like I think Taleb was like heavily critical of like genetically modified foods as well, to the point of absurdity. And when a lot of scientists tried to call him out of it, on it, he was just like, "I know math," and they're like, "Yeah, but we're doing biology over here."
Yeah. We're just trying to convince you that seedless grapes aren't poisonous.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's like, how do you know they won't be poisonous in like a million years? Have you ever done statistics? Yeah.
I'm planning on, knocking out a quick 80 here. I don't know, Talib.
Yeah.
I mean, to use the jargon of today, this is the helicopter parent producing the bubble-wrapped kid.
Right.
And when I did my college book about admissions to elite schools and all that, the complaint I heard most often from deans of admission, from college presidents at the very top schools in terms of selectiveness, was that these kids arrive on campus and they are overachievers by every metric that college is using. And the phrase that sticks with me is one admissions dean said, "I am always amazed by the stunning fragility of these kids," which is exactly what Jonathan was talking about. And so what do? We give them these safe spaces. We construct these affinity groups. And debate about that is so shut down. I wrote a column not long ago asking the question, all of these colleges that put so much effort into bringing in a diverse class, once those kids are on campus, what do they do to actually promote interaction so that you have diverse interactions
Imagine that.
right, and don't affinity groups, don't safe spaces, don't those sort of work in the opposite direction. I was forwarded tweets where people were saying things like, "I never knew Frank Bruni was such a racist." I was a racist because, so you asked how do Jonathan's colleagues react to him. When I talk to people in higher education, he's a hero because he's bringing up stuff about free speech and ideological diversity that they know needs to be but they won't say that in the public square, or they won't say the same things he's saying because they're so worried about a kind of shaming that the left right now, sadly, seems to specialize in.
So there's so much going on there, but I do want to pick up on the thread here that this is a common talking point we hear by like everyone we cover on this fucking show, which is this idea that there's this silent majority out there that would say the truth. They're just afraid. So like we're really in the majority. If you really just trust us, everyone else is they're really quiet about it. But you should trust us. We're in the majority. Don't worry. We have the correct opinion.
I'm like bothered by this shock that a system that is set up the way it is, where 17 and 18-year-olds who have done nothing but for the last 4 years but like do preparation entry tests and like try and get 100% on everything and have like geared their entire outside of school life as ways of seeming more attractive to universities admissions. Like, I don't know why they would be surprised that these people aren't prepared for the real world. And I also don't know why they would be like surprised why these people also can't punch through concrete like they seem to be hoping, right? Like it's like what kind of average do you need to get into like an Ivy League school when your parents doesn't donate 200 grand a year?
Like they are. I don't know. They live in a world here that like I can't relate to. I don't-
Yeah,
none
sorry.
Of,
I didn't
none
mean
of
to
their
leave you hanging there.
experiences like match reality, anyways. None of this makes any sense.
It's so great.
Yeah.
Sorry, we've extended this 10-minute clip to be like 2
No,
hours
no, that's
long,
fine.
but-
What's the other the other part that's like detached from reality here is just like talking about safe spaces and like the need for like areas on the campus where you like facilitate speech or something like this. And I'm like, most spaces on campus facilitate speech. Like they have like common rooms where like people can be loud and eat lunch and chat with each other. Like those exist all over the campus. then there's like I mean, there's other spaces that are safe, like the library, where like where like no, you shouldn't talk loud. Like no one seems to have a problem with quiet contemplation in the library. But if you have a space that's for quiet contemplation, but where like black people can feel like they're in a place where they don't have to be challenged on the fact that they're black, you know, that that's not an
Mhm.
issue and they can just feel safe there. The mere act of creating that kind of space, which part of me wants to say, like, I feel like they're mostly underutilized. Like, I don't see a lot of people adopting that. But, like, here's the thing, if it's there for people to use it if they want to use it, let them fucking use it. Like, why is this something that, like, we need to be, like, somehow the institution where, like, most of it is a space where, like, ideas can be had. But because there's this one room where people could just be like, I can just be myself and not have to worry about people being dicks to me like they are throughout the whole campus. Because you have that one spot, we're all fucking doomed. The kids are out of control. Like that's
Yeah, and the fact that they frame it as a zero sum game where that's some sort of like attack on their own person,
yeah.
like is so so patently ridiculous,
No,
right?
well,
Like
because
it
like
just
I'm now they call me the racist for merely suggesting this.
yeah, I'm a hero.
Yeah. They call me a racist, but really I'm a hero because everyone's so quiet. They don't. They're the silent majority agrees with us.
Ugh, my God.
Yeah. Oh my God is correct.
Yeah, and I think this is really crucial. Mark Lilla had a piece in the New York Times right after the election on the problem of identity politics and how this may have alienated a lot of people and contributed to Trump's victory. And the response from many academics was ferocious. One of his colleagues at Columbia, within a few days, had some essay basically linking him to the Ku Klux Klan. Now, which is what happened. Yeah, that's right. But here's the point. So Lilla comes back.
So I want to pause here and just say linking him to the Ku Klux Klan, okay? I found the quote that he was referring to. This
I
is
love this.
so it goes the reaction. So this is from an article in The Intercept about the book that he wrote about this incident, like years or maybe a year later after this interview, right? And they
Yeah.
got the person. So it goes the reaction to Lilla's original piece from the left and liberal writers were harsh. In the Los Angeles Review of Books, Lilla's Columbia University colleague, Frank, compared his ideology to that of former Ku Klux Klan leader David Duke's, arguing that Duke is happy to own the white supremacy of his statements, while Lilla's op-ed does the more nefarious background work of making white supremacy respectable. Now, is that linking him to the Ku Klux Klan?
I mean, if you like squint your brain a little bit and you just kind of like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's like you'd have to take such a bad faith reading of that quote to be like, that's what they're doing here.
And good night, Viking man. I mean, like, and like, if you're being charitable to hate, like, maybe he misspoke there and like overstated things in this like interview off the cuff, right? But there's also an element in like, I don't think her criticism there was like that unwarranted, where you have all these people complaining about safe spaces on campus, and so you're just like regurgitating like veiled white supremacy talking points, but trying to pretend like you're not a white supremacist, and like they're all doing it. Like to me, that's not shocking. That comparison is quite apt. Like David Duke
Yeah.
is saying the same things that all of them are saying, except he's like, yeah, because white supremacy, and they're like, no, we're just liberals here. We're just concerned. We're just all concerned.
Yeah, we're all classical liberals.
Yeah. Yes.
Ugh.
With this
I'm
brilliant
sorry.
point. He says,
That's-
that's a
I'm
slur,
doing a lot
not
of sighing.
no, sighing.
I'm just doing a lot of sighing. I
Sighing
apologize.
is an appropriate reaction.
an argument. And once he said that, I realized,
Oh, we missed it. This is the big revelation here.
Oh, sorry.
But here's the point. So Lilla comes back with this brilliant point. He says, that's a slur, not an argument. And once he said that, I realized, oh my God, that is exactly what has been happening to me. I've been saying some pretty provocative things, beginning with an Atlantic article with Greg Lukianoff, and I keep looking on the internet for people who will respond to it, and pretty much nobody is nobody's arguing against me for anything I say, but I do get a lot of people basically.
No one is arguing against what I'm saying. They're just using slurs. Let's read what she said again. Duke is happy to own the white supremacy of his statements, while Lila's op-ed does the more nefarious background work of making white supremacy respectable. If anything, like that's an argument that she's making. It is an argument. She's constructed it. It's very well. It's clear. And then they're like, no, they're just slurs. They're just being mean to me. They're just calling me a racist.
Yeah, well, if there's, you know, a substance to the critique of you, it's much harder to play victim, right? Like, and that's what he's doing here. He's like,
No,
these people are saying very mean things about me, and they're all untrue. Don't read what they say.
And Tim's getting to it too. It's like an easy way of just going, nuh-uh.
Yeah.
No.
No, you.
Yeah. And then they're like, but they don't want to have arguments with me. They make points, and the response is like, no, I don't want to. Thanks for engaging in this battle of ideas, sir.
Yeah, the woke mob has had its say, and I will be taking my ball and be going home. Right?
Yeah.
It's so silly.
Saying I'm a white male, or I somehow am winking at racism, something like that. So young people who go through these colleges, they're exposed to a rhetorical training that prevents them from learning how to engage. They're trained carefully in how to basically discredit your opponent. Slur. Right. They learn to slur. They do not learn to argue.
So go look at the tape from Middlebury, and that's exactly what you see. You see students with their backs turned, and they're chanting slurs. They're not having an intellectual argument.
And then...
Because when you're in a protest and you're like what the protesters should have done is while Charles Murray is on stage and they're out in front, they should be like, "Excuse me, sir, could we have an intellectual debate about why we think you're a racist?"
It's 10,000 people all chanting the same thing, but it's a very well thought out thesis statements.
Yeah. Hold on, sir, while I get my complete thesis statement about why you are a racist, okay? You have several days. Chapter 1.
Yeah. Well, if we all say it in unison, maybe he'll listen to the critique, right? Like, and I do think that that is like a very tried and tested maneuver as well. Of you know, I'm not, you know, closed off to ideas. I just don't like the way that you are critiquing me, right? And that's again like, no, you're upset that people will say that people will have the audacity to criticize you despite the awful things that you say, right?
I mean, yeah, I mean they're like jujitsu moves. Like when we were covering James Lindsay, the big one there too was like his was like whenever they're coming at you, you just go off Haven because what they're doing Hegelian dialectics at you, and so like that's why we call it the off Haven hours, right? It's just like, ooh, just my one trick pony. Like it's like a Jedi mind trick. Like these aren't the droids you're looking for. I figured out your tricks. Kid who's been converted to rhetorical slurs at the university. They don't work on me. I figured you out.
Oh my god.
And
it's a great way of putting it, to be honest.
But like in this case, it's like weird because like again, like even if you compare it to what this person like actually said about the guy, like there's something there to take serious, and it's like you could dissect. Well, like, am I approaching white supremacy? How does my position differ? Like you could try to engage in that intellectually, but they're going, we're not even going to engage with it intellectually. We're just going to assume that they're all robots and they're all like being taught talking points. I've never sat in a university lecture and had someone go like, okay, students, here's your talking points. Here's the power hierarchy. Here's privilege. And here's blah. Like they fucking think that like all these students are being taught is like a manual to just like go like, no, privilege.
Yeah. And it's also like every tutorial and every lecture I ever had in my BA, there was always one conservative idiot who didn't read
Yeah.
the like actual readings for the class and would chime in basically whenever they felt like to play devil's advocate, which was not at all infuriating because it was stupid, which I'm sure they didn't realize. They thought everybody was just brainwashed
They didn't
because
get it. I had someone, I graded a student's paper that was basically like, uh, gay marriage should, like, I don't even think gay marriage was a topic that they were like supposed to write on. They just were. It was like an ethics class, and they're like, and the thrust of the argument was gay marriage is not allowed because God was essentially it. And like I gave them an F, and I'm like, there's no argument here. Like even if I were to take like an objective viewpoint and try not to like let my bias come here on this article, there's no argument here. And then of course like what I got from him was, again, it's I'm just a liberal professor. He marked my paper because like he's biased or whatever. And like when he went up to like the next level to like my professor to like ask for like a better grade, and my professor's like, there's no argument here. it's it's like
I love that.
there was a bunch of them. Like they're always there, you know.
Beautiful.
I want to be
All right.
charitable here and say that there are activist rhetorical tactics you can learn to adopt that are effectively stand-ins for arguments you may not be prepared to have. But like that's not the same thing as demonstrating that valid counter-arguments don't exist. Yeah. Like there are like learning fallacies is not like a bad thing, but I think there is like a difference between just like going learning the fallacies and learning how to point them out and going fallacy as a response.
Yeah, have the klaxons going every single time anything approaches not being logically perfect. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I feel like it's just like in the grab bag of ways of getting out of, you know, having an honest conversation, right?
It really is. These aren't the droids you're looking for.
Yeah, yeah. I like jujitsu moves. Yeah, yeah. It's a 5-point penalty, Tim.
When I was on college campus, I was active in the Israel debate about the peace process. And
He was active in
when
the
I speak to
debate.
students today on campus, they say the BDS movement, the boycott, divestment, and sanctions debate about boycotting Israel, getting campuses to boycott Israel, it's no longer just between those who support one policy on Israel and those who oppose another policy on Israel, which it was like when I was going to college. Now, those who are hostile to Israel or U.S. policy towards Israel are joined by almost like a coalition of all these different factions who know nothing about the issue, but they all lock arms.
That's right. So
That's right. That's right. Was the fucking Haidt's response to that?
That's right.
That's right.
Well,
Because it's different, and I don't think he's doing a fair characterization of what's going on, but because it's different than what it was like when he was in college, it is wrong.
Well, now
Is what I'm getting from this.
they're locking arms with other groups that are like not quite like, I don't know what the fuck he's getting at, and like maybe Haidt's gonna like pull some threads out of this, but like, I mean, getting back to like this not being an accurate picture, like Israeli groups have been trying to get rid of the BDS groups on campus for like decades. Like that's
Yeah.
like
I mean,
speak of cancel culture, they've actively tried to silence these clubs.
yeah, like there's always been attempts to like shut down any sort of like solidarity groups on campus, like particularly on Palestine, but also historically on South Africa. Like,
Yep.
and you know, BDS is a newer sort of thing. Like, it's only 15 years old or so, and it's like the second that it was called for by Palestinian civil society. And so Palestinian solidarity groups were like, hell yeah, this is a good, like, you know, easy thing to call for that shouldn't be that controversial because we already went through it all with fucking South Africa. And then instantly all of these groups like started coming out being like, oh, it's specifically targeting, oh, blah 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 blah, and it's like, oh. And then, then they get to ally with the free speech clubs and the like everything like that, where it's like, oh wow, they're trying to cancel Israel, and
Well, now
ugh.
it gets to this point where he's like, well, it used to be just a debate, and now, like, I guess he's trying to suggest the BDS movement is like in the ascendancy here. Like, 'cause that's not at all the case. I don't I don't know where he's from, but like,
It's yeah, it's a very weird way of framing it because it's like, you know, maybe yeah, like it was more based around like talking and like, oh, support for like some sort of negotiations, but like after Oslo, it's like what's no, there is no negotiation that will like help Palestine. And BDS is, it's the nonviolent option.
yeah,
Like it's the one that's not like, going and training with the PFLP or whatever. Or the like PLO doesn't exist anymore. So like, and the Jordanian camps that the PFLP were trained at also for the most part don't really exist anymore. But like I don't know, it's just like so like were the old arguments being like, yeah, we should like support when the Palestinians hijack planes and like assassinate officials? Because that would have been way fucking cooler than whatever arguments are going on now about BDS. Like,
so like there is an element in which this is totally like removed from substance of any of the points or positions. Like he hasn't really said anything here about, about what these debates were. All he said is like they used to be debates. Now they're like linking arms with other groups. And the only thing that I can think that he's talking about is you get like Black Lives Matter standing in solidarity with them, or like other groups for other causes are standing in solidarity with BDS. So there's like this is happening.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like solidarity or something. I'm sure he's referring to like paid Antifa terrorists and stuff.
Yeah.
Um, it's just so lazy. The idea of like, we used to have debates in this country, and it's like, let's not talk about the actual points in the debates. Let's talk about the concept of debates. let's,
Yeah.
let's talk about
The debates were had, and that's when things were great. When we were just debating, not accomplishing anything. We were just sitting around making sure that ideas were discussed.
this, and the discussions were had, and then we all went home because this is just a game to me, essentially,
Nailed it.
right?
I wonder if that was it. Like, it was a UN debate club or something.
Dan was clearly on the UN debate club. Are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah, exactly. Like that's all it was to them.
Yep.
God, I bet they were fucking poli-sci students if they weren't economics. Like,
Yeah, they look insufferable. I mean, they sound insufferable too, in fairness.
Because the key to the new morality is a method of looking at society and looking in terms of power and privilege. So the old idea of an education is come to campus, we're going to teach you lots of perspectives that you can use, let's look at poverty. What would an economist say? What would a Marxist say? You used to learn a lot of perspectives to look at a single problem. What's happening now is some students, again, it's only in a few departments, but they're learning one perspective to look at everything. And so you start this. So there's a good kind of identity politics, which is, if black people are being denied rights, let's fight for their rights. That's the good kind. But there's a bad.
A raid. Thank you.
Are you guys kidding
Thank
me?
you very much, Feminist Critique. It is very kind of you to have raided us. We are currently well, first, how was your stream? What have you been up to? And everyone should go follow Feminist Critique. We have rated them a few times, so you might already be familiar with them. But if you're not following them, you should. You should as well. Hello. Political correctness. We are talking about Jonathan Haidt tonight. It's taking us a while, so if and we are here with a guest, Eric Wickham of the Big Shiny Takes podcast, and
Hello.
I am Jody and Vienno is
What is this? Are you
the
guys kidding me?
ethereal voice section of
Hello.
the podcast. And yeah, we're watching Jonathan Haidt and critiquing his stupid centrism. I guess is the best way to refer to it. We are almost done this
Yeah.
video, and then there was another video of him on CNN recently that I wanted
What is this? Are you guys kidding me?
to get to. So long as Eric's fun to play along, so we'll see.
I'm on board. Let's go for it.
Thank you to all the follows. You're all lovely people. I hope you stick around, and I hope you agree with us that Jonathan Haidt are silly. my voice is going in and out. I'm having audio issues, and I'm not sure quite how to fix it. I don't know if it's because my internet is dying or something. It could be that, and in that case, there's nothing I can do about it. But maybe in the future, things will be better. I think we've already agreed
willing.
that our plan is to abolish all audio. Audio is done. It's
Yeah.
so
Except
tired
for
of it.
ham radios.
Yes,
We
we
We'll
decided
have
that.
we'll have complex like light patterns that will convey the same basic ideas as audio currently does, and that'll kind of fix things a little bit.
I do love the idea that your, audio visual plan for the podcast and the stream is, mostly just optimism. Like I like that. Like next time it'll be better. Don't worry.
it's the thing is
Next
like
time
I
it
don't.
might be better.
That's the thing is like I don't know what's going on. Sometimes it fucking works and everything's fine, and then other times my whole chat goes nuts. So you're cutting in and out, and it's like I didn't do anything. I haven't touched a single thing. I haven't changed anything. I'm not speaking differently, and so I don't know. The issue is like it would be one thing if there was like some like obvious thing that I could point to and then I could fix it. But since there isn't, I'm like left in this like weird like middle ground of like why? But I do like I am thankful that people do point it out. It's just like on my end I'm just frustrated because like I can't do anything about it. I would rather I sounded beautiful for all of y'all and I didn't cut out and you could hear every word that I'm saying. I hope at least that you could hear every word that I'm saying. Because the comments I was getting earlier was that I go quiet every once in a while.
Can you make your audio come through Discord as well?
Make my audio come through yes, but it might be
For the
complicated.
stream?
I haven't quite figured
Okay.
out how to do it. There is a solution. It's just not immediately obvious to me how to do it. Maybe like I don't think turning me up is going to be the issue. Let me try one thing and see if this does anything. Maybe if I turn this down a bit. Does this help? Am I coming through now? Am I cutting in and out now? I'm curious if this actually does work. And if not, I will abolish all audio.
Yeah. Well, you've been like crystal clear on my end the entire time, but
Because
I mean that's not super
Discord
helpful.
Discord is wonderful. That's part of the problem. But like I don't know how to. Yeah, I haven't quite figured out how I want to do that. But anyways, I adjusted something. Let me know if that changed anything, and if it didn't, that sounds better. I think. Okay. Let me know if it's still like not great, and then I will again reduce what I just reduced. I will do it slightly until we find that happy position. It seems better. Okay. All right. I'll push it back just a little more and see how we do. Just a little more. Okay? All right. Let's go from there. Let's see if that works. Okay. Here's some more Jonathan Haidt. Thanks for joining us, Feminist Critique, folks. We love you. It's doing it slightly, but much better. Okay, interesting. Interesting to note. Thank you very much for this help, fellow people who have joined us. Communism is how you cuts out. You must be a capitalist. True. True.
Bad kind, which is to train students, to train young people to say, let's divide everybody up by their race and gender and other categories. We'll assign them moral merit.
I hate how he
based
talks
on
with his hands.
Oh,
I hate it so
he's like
much.
an academic. Think about it. Think about what we're doing here. We're engaging in like ideas and numbers.
their level of privilege is bad and victimhood is good. Okay, now let's look at everything through this lens. Israel, the Palestinians are the victims. So therefore, they are the good and the Jews, or the Israelis, are the bad. Right. And then you get, so it's this one totalizing perspective. All social problems get reduced to this simple framework. I think we're doing them a disservice. I think we're actually making students less wise. Right?
like, didn't I say like that they literally think that's how like people are being taught? Who's being taught that in university?
Well, I think we all remember our first global studies 101 in class, where we learned, first of all, that up here is good and down here is bad. But
yeah, you take like global policy 101 and they're just like, Palestinians are not privileged, so they're here, and the Israelis are more privileged, so they're down here. So therefore, Palestine good, Israel bad. I'll see you next week for the examination.
I wish I had that class.
I love the idea of like, this is the framework that professors are teaching people how the world works. Good, bad, thing that that leftists think is good, thing that I think is good. See you at the exam.
Yeah. It's such like a weird. I mean, I guess I get that they have to go there, because what else do they have, right? Like, how else do you explain all these people that think that I'm racist, other than that it must just be because they've been brainwashed with this really simplistic like outlook. It can't be because I'm actually racist. That can't be the result here.
Mass brain poisoning.
Yeah.
It's not because I'm a piece of shit.
Yeah.
It can't be that.
You know what I also see on campuses, Dan, is students who are not part of, who don't have the party line down pat. They really feel muffled. For some reason, frequently when I've been on campuses, I will have a student guide, or I'll end up with a student who gives some sort of tell that he or she is religious. And I'll say to that person, and I'm not a particularly religious person in the way we define it in this country, but I believe fervently in freedom along those lines. And I'll say to that student,
the way that we define it, like spiritual maybe, like I don't really care, but it is a weird way of putting it. I'm religion, like, but not in the way we define it.
I like the social conservatism aspects of religion. I just don't want to be put in a box.
I'm absurdly religious.
Yeah.
I'm religious, but it's more of like a metaphor. It's
yeah. I'm all for the withholding and the telling other people how to live their lives, but I just don't like going to church on Sunday.
Yeah.
How comfortable do you feel bringing up your religion or God in class, or in the fraternity house, or the sorority house, whatever? And always this sort of, they're so happy I asked the question, they said, I almost never talk about it. That's so wrong. And you mentioned Israel. I think if you're an Israel supporter, you probably bite your tongue more than you do shout it out.
Right, keep your head down.
And you shouldn't have to do that.
That's right.
Before
I don't think that's true.
No.
I can tell you from experience that is not true.
Every time you open your mouth, there's always like, that is true. That is very true. I mean, the religion, like there is an element like with the religion thing. Like, most people don't like talking about the religion unless they're like really devout, But like, which is fine. Like, talk about your religion. Like, I don't personally care. But like, there is an element in which is like common of this, like, you don't talk about politics and religion at the dinner table. You know what I mean? And partly because people know that could cause tension, and they want to get along at Thanksgiving or whatever it is, right? So it's like, there's an element of the same thing happens at school. Like, I don't think there's like a taboo where people are like, if you speak about religion, you're gonna be like, I don't know what he thinks gonna happen. Like all of a sudden, like Antifa is gonna pop out of the ceiling. It's just like, did you mention a god? There are no gods in Antifa heaven, or like I don't know, but it's like, maybe they're just like, I don't want to bring it up because I'm afraid that someone's gonna be like, oh, you said that you're Muslim. Well, I'm Hindu, and now there's a conflict
Literally, there's whole clubs based around it.
here. Yeah.
Like the Muslim Students Association is one of the biggest clubs at our university. Like,
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, that's the other part of it. Is like, I there's an element to which I don't think it's true, but if it is true, it's probably true in the way that I just described it. But like, part of that I think also is just amount of like, I don't know. It could be that like Christians can be annoying in a Christo-fascist way and racist, and that's like they might feel bad because when they talk about their Christianity, it might be in the service of like saying that gay people shouldn't get married or something, rather than it just being about like, oh no, I just love going to church, like you know what I mean. It probably manifests itself in ways that bothers people, so they get yelled at, and then they become Jonathan Haidt.
Yeah, yeah, and it's great. It's great that there's more people like Jonathan Haidt out in the world. Good stuff.
I realize I keep calling him Hate when he's Height, but I'm not going to change.
I like it. No, it's a better name.
Before we leave, one thing I don't think we've said loudly and clearly enough is when people on the left, or whatever, however you want to, when they try to shut down this debate, do they not realize that Donald Trump's election in 2016 is partly the fruit of those sorts of actions? I know so many people who flirted with voting for Trump, who did vote for Trump, who were responding to his destruction of a kind of political correctness
I think you're right,
that they
Ken
find
Tsai.
oppressive.
777.
And so there's a real relevance to what we're talking about today on campus and who's governing our country right now. And I don't think the people on the left have wrestled adequately with that.
And the reason is because you have to see this not as a practical method of addressing problems. It's the dawn of a new religion. And I study moral psychology as though it's religion, politics, even sports tribalism. They're all manifestations of our tribalism. And I think we see this in the Charles Murray case very clearly. I just watched the video again today before coming here. And at the end, when the administrators say, okay, we're going to move the talk, and some of them scream, off campus,
Right.
off campus. And then he says to another venue on campus, and they scream. Because what you have to see is the campus is there. It's a church. That's right. Wow. And you cannot have blasphemy on campus. And so the best way to understand what happened, I think, is an auto de fe. It's a religious rite coming together to punish the sinner, to punish the devil, and to reaffirm our community.
Listen, Charles Murray is like awful. Like I feel like comparing him to the devil is not a stretch. But like, what the fuck?
But he's saying like it's a sign of their irrationality in ways, in like the way they perceive him as this like evil force. But it's like, no, he says and does racist shit. So like, of course, like it's amazing for me that he connects it to it somehow being a religion, and that the university is now like a church, and you got to keep the impurities out of church or whatever. And it's like, no, like maybe we don't want. Oh, that's on your screen. I got confused and thought my wife.
Dude, that's someone was
me.
breaking into your house.
And I was like,
no,
yeah.
no.
Then I'm like, oh, why? But then why would I have thought that it was your house? I don't know. I got like perplexed. My brain fog. But I can't even remember what I
Your
was saying.
brain
Like,
on Jonathan Haidt.
exactly. Fried my brain. But it's like, it's not a church. It's like maybe like having. Not wanting racists in your institution is not like the equivalent of like, we don't want sinners in our church, right?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. One is something that makes sense to me. You wouldn't want someone like Charles Murray anywhere near your academic institution or your person, because he's an awful guy.
Like, I just want to be like, that mass, the fact that they wouldn't let that mass murderer speak on campus is a sign mind that they've turned their beliefs that mass murder is bad into a religion on campus, and now the university is a church of anti-murder, and like,
Yeah. Yeah. I cannot believe one, how self-congratulatory that segment was. Two, the fact that there wasn't even like a producer just like shaking their head.
Hello, my rebels. Hello, my rebels. I'm a good boy. I'm a weirdo.